Welcome. Today we're going to begin seated at the top of your mat, cross-legged, easy position, easy pose. Hands are grounding down, palms down on the knees, rooting through the sit bones, sitting up tall through the spine. Shoulders are down away from the ears as we extend through the crown of the head, eyes closed. Setting your intention for this class for the rest of the evening. And beginning to cultivate the Ujjayi breath, that soft whispering breath on the back of the throat. Just noticing the inhales, noticing the exhales, and bringing the palms together at the chest, at the heart. And then opening the eyes, bring the arms straight in front of you, palms facing one another, extending straight through the elbows, rocking back and forth on those hip points. So on those sit bones, rocking back and forth, just letting the belly fall forward, and letting the belly fall backwards, and then coming back to neutral, moving the shoulders in and out of the socket, forwards and backwards until you can find a nice neutral position in the shoulder socket. And then from here, inhaling the arms up above the head, so the outer arms are wrapping toward the wall ahead of you. The shoulders are down away from the ears. Sitting up a little bit taller on each inhale. Relaxing into the hips a little bit more on each exhale. And on the next exhale, dropping the left hand to the right knee, the right hand will come a little bit behind you as you find a gentle twist. So the twist is happening from the navel on up. Your headlights on your car, being your frontal hip points, are always facing, always shining the light ahead of you, facing forward as you find the twist from the navel on up. And you might look over that right shoulder if it's okay on your neck. On the next exhale, releasing that, coming back to center, second side. The arms come in front of you, and then on the inhale, inhaling the arms up, outer arms wrapping toward the wall ahead of you. And then on the next exhale, dropping the right hand to the left knee, left hand comes behind you as you find that gentle twist. Inhaling, always gathering length through the spine on the inhale. Exhaling, finding a little bit more of a twist, but going easy since we're just getting started here. On the next exhale, releasing the twist to face the front of your mat, clasping the hands together in front of you, rolling the wrists around, finding a little warm up, lubricating those wrist joints, switching the cross of the fingers, moving in the opposite direction. And then bringing the palms together like samastitihi, but rolling the wrists forward. So the wrists are always touching, but the fingers are moving away from you and then coming back towards your heart, round and round. And then as you're ready, you can switch sides if you'd like, switch directions. And then bring the hands back into the heart eventually. We'll go ahead and get rid of the block or the bolster that you're seated on, if at all. And just slowly, gently guide yourself down to lay down on your mat, extending the arms and the legs long. On your next inhale, pulling the right knee into the chest, taking the top of the shin or behind the knee. Left leg is extended long, flexing through that left ankle as you roll the right hip, roll the right knee in circles as though you're painting circles on the ceiling for just a minute, and then pulling that right knee into the chest in a neutral position. Breathing deep into the belly on the inhales, exhaling, letting the shoulders descend toward the mat. Always coming back to the Ujjayi breath. Pulling the left knee into the chest as well to meet the right, just to switch sides, extending that right leg straight and strong. Ankle is flexed, knee is straight. Rolling the left knee in circles. And then as you're ready, switching directions. And on your next inhale, pulling that knee into neutral, into the chest. The right comes in as well to meet the left. Giving your knees a little kiss. Tucking that lower belly toward the spine. And then on the next exhale, dropping the shoulder and then the head. And extending the right arm above your head just to roll over to your right side to come back up to a seated position. From here, we'll move forward, tucking the legs beneath you, or any way you can find tabletop position. Finding your alignment from the ground up, spreading all 5 fingers wide, rooting into that fleshy mound between the thumb and the forefinger. Looking back to make sure your toes and your heels are behind the knees. So the hands and the shoulders are hip width. The knees are directly below the hips as we move into cat-cow. On the inhale, opening through the heart, across the collarbones, dropping the belly. Exhaling, back of the heart to the ceiling, tailbone to the back of the knees. Inhale, crown of the head to the ceiling. Exhaling, really letting the head and the neck relax. On your own breath, linking breath with movement. Couple more rounds here. And then coming into neutral again, walking the hands out about 6 inches for hip circles. So this is a little bit more free form, just breathing into any place that feels tight or sticky. You can get a little animalistic here. There's no rhyme or reason. And then moving the hips in the opposite direction, just letting this feel good. A little bit more non-linear than the customary yoga practice. Eventually coming into center. You can sneak in a quick child's pose if you'd like, but we're going to keep moving. And then coming back to tabletop position. Keeping that Ujjayi breath going, even when we take pauses. Lifting the knees just an inch or so from the mat. On the breath, inhaling them up and exhaling them down. Lower belly to the spine as you lift, exhaling down. Inhaling up, exhaling down, creating just a little bit of heat. Inhaling up and exhaling the knees down. Walking the hands out again, preparing for Adho Mukha Shavasana, downward facing dog. Little bend in the knees to get started, working the pose from the ground up. All 5 fingers are spread wide. I'm a YogaWorks teacher, so we talk about rooting the fleshy mound between the thumb and the forefinger so that we're not gripping the fingers. Same thing, the toes are spread wide. The outer arms are wrapping down towards the mat so that the heart can melt. The upper body in one long straight line, and then bending through the right leg, bending through the left leg, just letting that feel good. Getting into those hips a little bit. Can keep that going as long as you'd like, but we're now coming back into downward facing dog. Holding for 3 to 5 breaths is customary in our holds. The second and third toe are tracking directly behind the knees. Those sit bones are reaching for the crease where the ceiling meets the wall. Inhaling all the way deep into the belly on those inhales. Exhaling, letting the heels descend a little bit closer to the mat. Bending deep into the knees, we'll come back down to the mat. And putting our blocks to use, we'll find both of our blocks at shoulder width at the top of the mat on the lowest setting. And we're going to move into our first Adho Mukha Shavasana, downward facing dog on the block. So a little bit different, spreading those fingers wide. We don't want to grip the block. We'd like to just root into the block, inhaling the right leg up from the inner thigh, just to horizontal. Mine's a little bit high in this image, but shifting forward, knee to nose, as we step the right foot to meet the right hand, right block, actually. So you should be just inside of that right block. The feet are hip width, so you can always look down at your body. And then finding this runner's lunge. So the back leg is like your rudder, straight and strong. Inhaling all the way from that back heel through the hips, shoulders, crown of the head. And exhaling, finding that right knee tracking directly above the right ankle. Lower belly to the spine as we come back to the Ujjayi breath over and over. Inhaling the arms up alongside the body, palms facing down. Moving a little bit more strength into that front leg. That inner thigh is energetically dropping down towards the earth, but that right hip is still pulling back toward the back heel to keep that right knee in line. And then exhaling, finding our hands on our blocks again, dropping the left knee all the way down to the earth. You can keep those back toes curled under or release them. Big inhale from the knee through the hips, all the way up through the shoulders, expanding on all 4 sides of the torso. And then exhaling, letting the pose do the work. Just letting the weight of the body open the left hip flexor, the top of the thigh, the groin muscles. Keeping the Ujjayi breath in place. The neck is long, shoulders are down away from the ears, curling those back toes under again, finding the runner's lunge, and then just stepping the right leg back to meet the left for plank pose. 1 breath, moving directly into downward facing dog again. Floating the left leg up from the inner thigh, finding that horizontal one-legged dog. And then on the next exhale, you're going to shift forward again, knee to nose, just enough to get that left foot up towards the left block. Feet are hip width. You can always move the blocks around so that they're directly underneath the shoulders. Big inhale, finding that runner's lunge. Back leg is straight and strong. Holding here for just a moment, creating a little strength. And then inhaling, floating those left arms up alongside the body. Lower belly is moving away from that left thigh. Palms are down, 1 long line from the heel, through the hips, through the shoulders, through the crown of the head, always getting longer on those inhales. And then exhaling the hands back down to the blocks. Stepping that left, dropping the right knee. Moving into the hip flexor stretch. So big inhale again, all the way from the knee, through the hips, through the crown of the head. Exhaling, letting the hips just drop down into the mat. Releasing those back toes if you'd like. Using the breath to unlock what's gripping, whatever's holding on. You can always close the eyes in this pose. Feels really nice to just take a moment. And then curling those back toes together, outer hips move towards one another to safely rise back up to the runner's lunge, stepping back, just straight to down dog this time. Big inhale all the way into the base of the belly, and exhale, letting those heels descend. Floating that right leg up again from the inner thigh, and then shifting forward again, knee to nose, stepping the right foot to meet the right block. Feet are hip width, dropping that left knee again, same thing. This time moving into the hamstring stretch, shifting back so the hips are going to stay directly above that left knee, moving the blocks back so that they can be under the shoulders. Big inhale as you straighten through that right leg, flexing that right ankle, and then exhaling, keeping the spine really nice and long as you find the stretch. So we're not putting our nose down towards our kneecap, we're keeping the length of the spine, and you can see how I came out of the pose a little bit to find a little bit more length, and then exhaling. On the next inhale, rising back up out of the pose, pulling that right foot down to the mat, pushing the blocks ahead underneath the shoulders, stepping back and finding Adho Mukha Shavasana, downward facing dog. Floating the left foot up from the inner thigh, and then exhaling, shifting forward, knee to nose. Left foot comes to the left block. So feet are hip width. Left knee is directly above the left ankle. Finding length, that back leg straight and strong, and then dropping the right knee. So you can always come to the top of the right kneecap. It's a little bit more comfortable when we scoot our knee back that way. Kneecaps are weird. And then on the next exhale, moving those blocks back as we find length through the spine. Left ankle is flexed. The knee is shrugging up into the thigh as we firm the muscles to the bone, and then exhaling, finding the stretch. For anyone who's hypermobile, always taking care to have a micro bend in your knees if you tend to be hypermobile. And then just coming back to the breath. On the next inhale, lower belly to the spine, outer hips move towards one another to safely release that. Moving those blocks aside if you can in the pose that I chose to do that. Either way, just moving them aside, stepping back for plank. You can see how we always take a minute to make sure we have our alignment in place, but never staying focused on keeping the alignment in place. We find our place and then we breathe. We let it go. We hold the pose. So holding plank pose here, inner thighs are wrapping up towards the ceiling. Tailbone is extending towards those heels. Heels are directly above the balls of the feet. Shoulders are down away from the ears. Exhaling those knees down to the earth. Just taking a moment. And then moving back up to plank pose. Lifting the right leg just an inch off the ground. Little challenge here. Lifting the left leg just an inch off the ground. Keeping the upper body exactly where it is. Inhaling the right leg, the left leg. You can do that again if you'd like. I thought I did it twice, but no. We're just going to go for another round, I believe. Oh, nope. We are lowering our upper body down towards the ground. Uncurling those toes. Extending through the leg, putting those hip flexors directly on the ground. Hands come to the floor. So extending the arms long, palms facing down, forehead to the mat. Inhaling the upper body, palms are staying on the mat. So on the breath, pressing into that pubic bone, inhaling the upper body, only extending longer versus higher. On the breath, inhaling again. And exhaling down. Inhaling to rise. Exhaling down. This is a modified Shalabhasana. And then inhaling, holding. So we're pressing into the pubic bone, pressing into the tops of the feet, extending through the lower back. And then exhaling the upper body down. You can place your left cheek on the mat and shake those hips side to side, releasing the lower back, moving to the right cheek, shaking the hips, releasing the lower back. Forehead comes back to the mat, preparing for Shalabhasana, both the arms and the legs. Now you can stay where we were. We're moving on the breath first, inhaling arms and legs. So upper body and lower body. Inhaling to rise and exhaling to fold. Couple more. Inhaling to rise. Lower back is extending. Exhaling to fold. We always get longer in Shalabhasana versus cranking down into the lower back. And this time holding. And on your next exhale, releasing the legs, the arms, left cheek to the mat again. Releasing the bum, just shaking side to side, letting that feel good. Moving to the right cheek, same thing, shaking the bum. Coming back to the forehead on the mat. Placing the hands alongside the lower ribs, making sure the elbows are directly above the wrist, always looking down at your body, making sure you're in the right spot for baby cobra. So same thing, pressing the pubic bone, the tops of the feet, the legs are straight and strong. We're extending through the lower back. Heart is opening towards the wall ahead of us, and the crown of the head is moving towards the ceiling. And then exhaling, forehead comes back down to the mat. Curling the toes under, this time pushing into the hands, moving back up to tabletop. Walking the hands out, moving into downward facing dog, Adho Mukha Shavasana. Rooting through the fleshy mound between the pointer finger and the thumb, all 5 fingers spread wide, outer arms, triceps wrapping down towards the mat, heart extending towards the mat, lower belly to the spine, sit bones moving toward that high point at the top of the wall. Exhaling, letting those heels descend directly behind the second and third toe. We're going to bend deep into the knees on the next exhale, walking up to meet the hands. Inhaling halfway, flat back, Ardha Uttanasana. Exhaling, folding for Uttanasana. So the feet are hip width, bending into the knees. We're going to roll up slowly, one vertebrae at a time as the head comes up last, turning the palms out for Tadasana. Inhaling the arms up, palms facing one another, outer arms facing the wall ahead of you, wrapping towards the wall ahead of you, I should say, and then hands come to the heart for Samasthiti. Inhaling to rise, modified sun A's. Exhaling, heart drops first, swan diving all the way down to forward fold. Inhaling halfway, fingertips to the shins, flat back. Exhaling, folding for Uttanasana. Inhaling, one more time, flat back. Exhaling to fold. Rooting into all 4 corners of both feet. Inhaling, halfway, flat back. Exhaling to fold. Bending deep into the knees, rolling up again, 1 vertebrae at a time. The head comes last as we turn the palms out, inhaling all the way up. You might look up towards the palms and then dragging the palms through that third eye center down into the heart. Inhaling again and exhaling, folding all the way forward fold. Inhaling halfway, Ardha Uttanasana. Exhaling, folding for Uttanasana. Bending into the knees, rolling up again. 1 vertebrae at a time, turning the palms out. Palms may or may not come together. Either way is fine. Exhaling, hands to the heart. Inhaling to rise. And exhaling, swan diving, heart first. The arms drop along with the body, the head last. Inhaling halfway for Ardha Uttanasana. Exhaling, forward fold for Uttanasana. Bending into the knees, rolling up again. Inhaling the arms all the way up. And exhaling, palms come together at the heart. Inhaling, rising, floating the arms up. Exhaling, swan diving, head drops last. Inhaling, halfway, Ardha Uttanasana. Exhaling, this time the hands come to the mat as we step back for plank pose. Finding plank pose, inhaling, gaining length. Exhaling, dropping the knees all the way to the mat, dropping the upper body again with the elbows pinning in. Releasing the toes, moving into baby cobra. Exhaling, forehead comes back down to the mat, pressing into the palms, curling the toes under for tabletop position, walking the hands out, and then pushing into downward facing dog. So that's a modified sun salutation A. Coming back to the breath, inhaling, lengthening through both sides of the torso. Exhaling, sit bones reach for the top of this wall behind you. And on the next exhale, bending deep into the knees, walking up to meet the hands. Inhaling halfway, flat back, Ardha Uttanasana. Exhaling, folding for Uttanasana. This time you can flat back or continue to roll up all the way to rise. Exhaling, hands to the heart. We're still sun salutation A's. Inhaling, turning the palms out. Inhaling to rise. Exhaling, swan diving, releasing. Forward fold. Inhaling halfway, flat back. Exhaling, palms come to the mat, stepping back for plank. Shifting forward a little bit. Dropping the knees, elbows pin in as you lower your body down all the way to the ground, releasing the toes, forehead to the mat. Inhaling, upper body, lower back extends for cobra, baby cobra. Exhaling, forehead to the mat. Pushing into the palms, curling the toes under, walking the hands out for Adho Mukha Shavasana, downward facing dog. 3 to 5 breaths here. Working the pose from the ground up. On the next exhale, bending deep into the knees, walking up to meet the hands. Inhaling halfway, fingertips graze the shins. Exhaling to fold. Rolling up or traditional flat back, turning the palms out to rise. Exhaling, hands to the heart, Samastitihi. Inhaling to rise, arms float up, Utthita Tadasana. Exhaling, swan diving, heart, then head drops, neck releases. Inhaling halfway, Ardha Uttanasana. Exhaling, stepping back for plank again. Shifting forward, I'm going to show you the full version, but you can still drop the knees and move through baby cobra. Here we have upward facing dog or baby cobra. Exhaling, moving through tabletop, back to downward facing dog, just like prior, or moving straight to downward facing dog if you moved through up dog. Inhaling all the way into the base of the belly, expanding into the hips. Exhaling, letting those heels release. So we're always rooting into the mat, but everything is firming up and in towards one another as we rise away from the mat. On the next exhale, bending deep into the knees, floating up to meet the hands. Inhaling halfway, Ardha Uttanasana. Exhaling to fold, Uttanasana. Traditional flat back up. If you'd like to move to that, exhaling, hands to the heart. So always evening out the breath, just noticing where the breath is, holding here in Samastitihi, gives us a moment to notice where we are. And then stepping the left leg out, or the right leg, depending on how you're facing the laptop, TV, computer, facing me so that you can see what we're doing here. We're moving into goddess pose. So the feet are about a leg's length apart, moving the feet out at about 45 degrees, sitting back so that the knees are coming directly above the ankles, and then lining up the second and third toe behind the kneecap. So we're keeping safe here. Hands can come to the knees. We're really just gently, we're not leaning into the hands, they're just resting on our knees. The inner thighs are dropping, our hips and our glutes are doing the work. making sure the shoulders are stacking back directly over the hips. The neck is long, the crown of the head is pushing into all four corners of the feet as we rise back up. And then finding starfish for just a moment. Arms up, fingers wide, giving those legs a little rest. And then dropping back down into goddess pose, exactly where we were before. We're going to just take a little stretch here. This is just a gentle twist. You don't want to crank down into the lower back, but exhaling, dropping the left or the right shoulder first. It doesn't matter. Just dropping it towards the mat, inhaling back to center, and then exhaling the opposite shoulder. Just letting that feel good. Knees are staying exactly where they are, though. They're not cranking in. And then hands come to the heart, and then pressing the legs straight, and just simply stepping back up to the top of the mat. So just noticing the breath again, inhaling, evening out the breath, exhaling, moving back to where we were before, so stepping directly to face the camera again, and then turning that right leg from deep within the hip socket, moving the left foot back ever so slightly. We're looking for a little bit longer stance here for warrior two. So the front heel is dissecting the back arch, and you want to make sure that front hip isn't dropping. So bringing the front hip up to meet the back, and then that left hip is wrapping forward as we inhale the arms up and exhale into warrior two, Virabhadrasana 2. So looking back, just noticing where the left arm is in space, gazing off of those right fingertips. So working the pose from the ground up, really rooting into the outer edge of the back foot. The arch is pulling up. The back knee is straight because that back leg is like a rudder on your boat. Looking down, making sure that right knee is tracking behind the second and third toe and is directly above the ankle. And then exhaling that side, releasing that side, turning the right foot in to meet the left. And then you can shake those hips out for a second if you'd like. Inhaling the arms up this time, moving that left hip forward from deep within the hip socket. The back toes turn in, pulling that left frontal hip point up to meet the right. The right hip is wrapping toward the front, inhaling the arms up again if you'd like, and then exhaling, bending deep into that left knee. So we can move around and adjust a little bit as we need. Look back at the back arm, find the pose, and then releasing all of that from your brain, coming back to the breath, putting the attention on the inhales, standing up taller through the spine. Exhale is sitting a little bit deeper into that front leg. Finding your drishti, that one-pointed focus, drifting off of those left fingertips. And then exhaling the left leg straight, turning the left toes in to meet the right. Hands come to the hips, and just stepping back to the top of the mat. Finding Tadasana, mountain pose. Inhaling the arms up, Utthita in Tadasana. Exhaling, swan diving, dropping the head and then the heart, folding forward, forward fold. Rolling up this time, one vertebrae at a time, just letting it feel good. Notice how different it feels from when we first started doing Sun A's. Inhaling the arms up, exhaling, hands to the heart, Samastitihi. And then stepping to face your computer or TV or camera again. Moving into tree pose. So this is a modified version. So stepping into all four corners of that left foot, really rooting the left foot. That left leg is like your tree trunk. It's straight and strong. Placing the base of the right foot just above the ankle. And so that, noticing that right hip, is it sneaking up? You want it to drop down and meet the left. That's why we have our hands on our hips, so you can notice where those hip points are. The leg that's bent is going to be at a little bit of a 45-degree angle, and you can see that even yoga teachers fall out of modified versions of poses. So we fall, we get back up, right? Hands come to the heart, coming back to the breath, finding your drishti. The eyes fall a little bit soft as your gaze finds a little spot on the wall ahead of you to focus. If you'd like to challenge yourself, you can extend your arms above your head. And then bringing the hands back together at the heart in any way you choose. Hands come to the hips, releasing that side, shaking that left leg out. Ooh, it's a little work there. Turning the palms out, mountain pose. Hands come back to the hips, second side. So tree pose, Vrikshasana. So again, standing leg is straight and strong. The leg that's bent is at about a 45-degree angle so that we're not pinching the lower back. And you never want that foot to be on the knee. You want it to be, especially in this modified version, obviously we're going below the knee, but the full pose goes above the knee. We never want the bent leg's foot to be on the knee. And then finding your drishti. Hands come together at the heart, releasing that side, shaking the right leg out. Coming to the top of the mat, hands are at the heart again. Inhaling the arms up, clearing all of this out with a vinyasa. Actually moving to our arms extended straight ahead of us, making sure the shoulders are in a neutral position as we sit for chair pose, Utkatasana, also known as awkward pose. So the feet are parallel. The knees are bending directly above the ankles. So you want to look down, make sure you can see your toes, pick them up, spread them wide, place them back down on the mat. The inner thighs are dropping. The lower belly is moving away from the tops of the thighs. And then exhaling, coming to stand, pushing into all four corners of both feet, and then hands come back to the heart. Inhaling the arms up again. Exhaling, forward fold. So clearing this out with a vinyasa, our one chair pose. Inhaling halfway, flat back. Exhaling, hands come to the mat. This time we're just going to squat down to move down to the ground in a very simple manner. So placing both feet directly on the floor with bent legs, knees and feet are hip width apart, pulling those arms forward again, just like we've been doing the whole class, and making sure that the lower back is extending long, the lower belly is moving towards the spine. So we're hugging in towards the spine from all directions, finding a V-sit, so sitting back a little bit, noticing how the tops of the thighs and the hip flexors are going to try to clench. Move the work into the lower belly. On the next inhale, raising the right leg, the shin to parallel with the mat, exhaling that down. Same thing on the second side, inhaling the left leg up, shin comes parallel to the mat, exhaling that side down. You can stay with that, or if you'd like to challenge yourself, you can pick both legs up for a modified version. The shins are parallel to the mat, and then exhaling, letting that go, coming up, sitting forward so that you can kind of release the hip flexors, and then sitting back, holding onto the tops of the knees and just rocking back and letting the weight of the pose just kind of give you a little love there, a little stretch. Inhaling the back, arms back up, rolling down, this time one vertebrae at a time as slowly as you can. You're going to get to that weird sticky spot. And just releasing eventually the chest, the arms, the head. Pulling the heels in towards the bum. They should be about where your fingers can graze your heels. The knees are directly above the ankles. Preparing for modified bridge pose, so pressing into all four corners of the feet. Inhaling the belly, creating a long line. Heart is open, and we're moving on the breath. So inhaling the hips up away from the ground, and then exhaling, coming back down to the ground. The hips come all the way to the floor. Inhaling, pressing. The inner thighs are dropping. And then if you'd like to move directly into bridge pose, you can. Or you can come back down and press back up again, finding bridge pose. If you have it in your practice to move your upper arms underneath your back body and clasp the hands, you're welcome to do that. Otherwise, keeping the arms parallel is just fine too. On the next exhale, rolling down one vertebrae at a time until the hips come to the earth, releasing the arms out from under you. And finding that sweet spot on the neck. You always want a little bit of space, about an inch or so between your neck and the mat as we push into our second round of bridge pose. Inhaling, the heart is energetically rising, the inner thighs are releasing, the bum is not gripping. The work is in the hamstrings and the outer thighs, and then exhaling, releasing all of that down to the mat. You're welcome to swivel the knees side to side just a couple times, releasing the lower back, and then coming back to center. Placing one hand on the heart, one hand on the belly, just taking a moment to really let the hips drop into the earth. You can move the feet to the outer edges of the mat if you'd like. Let the knees knock in. That way you can really let the body sink into the mat. Big inhale all the way into the base of the belly. And this time exhale through the mouth. Pulling the knees apart from one another if they were there, extending the left leg straight and strong, and pulling the right knee into the chest just like we began the class. So taking the top of the shin, you can clasp below the calf, below the knee if you'd like, and then letting that right knee drop across your body for a gentle twist. So the left hand will come to the outside of the left thigh. You'll extend the right arm in a T shape, palm facing up. And if it's okay on your neck, you can gaze off of the right fingers and then close the eyes. Big inhale. Exhaling, letting the body do the work. I'm moving a little fast because I ran out of iPhone storage and I'm refilming, and I'm worried it's going to happen again. So pardon me, you can always slow this part down. Coming back to neutral, switching sides, extending the right leg long, pulling the left knee into the chest, inhaling, gaining length even though we're lying on the floor. Letting the hips and the shoulders drop into the mat, and then as you're ready, letting the left leg move across the body for your gentle twist on the second side. Big inhale. Exhaling, letting the body do the work, just letting everything release to the ground. There's nothing to work on here. And on your next inhale, pulling that left knee back to center. Pulling the right knee to meet the left, giving your knees a little kiss again, one last second of core work. And then dropping the head, shoulders, legs, everything extends down, preparing for corpse pose, finding that sweet spot where you do have a little space underneath the neck, between the neck and the mat. Big inhale all the way into the root, the perineum. Exhaling, letting everything just melt into the mat. The baby toes are dropping. The tops of the thighs are moving into the backs. The knees are spreading away from one another. Another big inhale. Exhaling, letting the hips descend. The front ribs are dropping into the back ribs. The hands, the arms, the elbows are very heavy. The heart is energetically rising while the shoulders are dropping down into the mat. The cheeks are relaxing. The earlobes are getting heavy. The eyeballs are dropping all the way down into their sockets. Ideally, we'll stay here for a minimum of 5 minutes in Shavasana. But as you're ready, you can come back into a cross-legged position with the eyes closed, just like we started, palms down on the knees, coming back to the intention that we said at the beginning of class. Inhaling the hands together at the heart. Slight bow. Namaste.